So markets have been pretty volatile over the last few years, but sort of more increasingly over the last 12 months. Clarity as a pre-revenue biotech is probably more susceptible than sort of most other sectors. How have you sort of managed that? How does the company kind of just progress through its clinical trials?
Yeah, it's certainly been the case. Just thinking back, we listed in 21 and and remembering then interest rates started to go up. It was a disaster for biotech
Mhm.
around the world.
Mhm.
We weren't alone, but we raised a lot of money at that point in time and we're in a good position. But the volatility
Mm.
seems to be getting worse and worse. We're down 10% on a day and up 12% the next day. It's incredible. It's incredible. And it's more from the perspective of who would be an investor with that sort of volatility. Now, the issue that we have, that in particularly I have in this context of building a company in this sort of market is we're developing long term assets
Mhm.
and we require capital and the like from investors that have very short term measures.
Mhm.
Daily, some of those mark to market daily,
Mhm.
and every day it's updated on a website. And so I feel sorry for the institutional shareholders that have that. I don't have that time frame. I have the time frame of build value from the bottom up,
Mhm.
not measure what the right time to come into the market or out is.
Yep.
And so our goal is to continue to build that from the ground up. We have a lot of shareholders who are employees of our organization, and that group now owns quite a significant amount of the company. We have people who've been there for a long time from when it was an idea
Mm.
as a company to where we are today. They've had, quite significant, uplifts in the value that they
Mhm.
have, which is terrific. But when I look at how things are panning out, and it's different for every shareholder because people put them into general groups.
Yep.
I've seen institutional investors day trade.
Mhm.
I've seen retail have long term views and have succeeded significantly off that. In the day trading environment, it's a zero sum game.
Mm.
One side will win, one side will lose. We know that. That's how the maths works because there's no real change in position or value. Um, and to see how that feeds through, we have now a lot of, and we've always been, and we always market to, or have communication with institutions.
Yep.
It comes from my background of, some now a quarter of a century in the markets. That's always been the focus. Our focus hasn't been retail.
Mhm.
We find the retail following comes from building a great company.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean the retail aren't affected then by volatility and the things that go on. And we see that dynamic happening all the time.
Mhm.
I think biotech, pre-revenue biotech, it's certainly an acquired taste. When you're on the risk, when we look at the paradigm, it is at the far risky end. Developing drugs pre-revenue
Yep.
is at the pointiest end. And I remember going to a lunch in the city and discussing this, and there's another one coming up at one of the big end of town investment banks, and they have a healthcare day. And I was sitting in that room. It's, we don't have this view in Redfern, but sitting in the room looking over the harbour, and I was looking at the boats, and I had all these institutional investors and the banks talking about the environment.
Mm.
And so they're deciding if it's going to be sunny tomorrow, whether they should be on our boat or not. Right? We're on the boat.
Yep.
We don't have any alternative.
Yep.
We're not getting off the boat.
Yep.
They're deciding whether in or out of interest rates going on, or this is happening, or this, or whether things are going bad in Iran or not, has nothing to do with what's happening in the boat itself. It happens with the environment in which we exist.
Yep.
Pre-revenue biotech is at that pointy end. So retail will always blame the company
Mm.
if the share price falls down or whatever. Oh, it's taking too long clinical trials. Oh, it's doing this with no insight, but
Mhm.
speak with authority on stuff that they don't know.
Yep.
Now, I want to give some compliments to it. I didn't know, and it's interesting watching something like Hot Copper.
Mm.
I never paid a lot of attention to hot copper except for maybe on a Friday night, grab a glass of wine and have a look at who's commenting and who's close or not. And there's some brilliant people, I must say, that are part of that hot copper mix. And some of them email me directly, and I correspond and say, I find it incredible the amount of insight you have with imperfect information.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been a big fan of that. Coming from a science background, you have imperfect information. You're trying to work out, due to some statistical, significance, whether something's going to happen in the future or not. And what they're able to nail just off the back of public information, I think is fantastic, some of those people. Others can't spell. So it becomes a real situation, particularly when you're looking at competing, companies, shareholders talking on ours, and it's you've got that mix of people. If you can't spell, you're not going to find, the high impact factor journals where our stuff is published, where it shows all the stuff that you're saying that we don't have.
Yep.
You're not going to have that insight into the markets. You're not going to know the threat we present
Mm-hmm.
to other companies with the development of an asset which is so much better, so much more efficacious.
Mm-hmm.
So this dynamic is still part of the financial markets.
Yep.
There's a level of institutions. Some have a high level of insight, as you know, Maddie, because you're an analyst, a very bright analyst that covers our space. The institutions have that mixed level of knowledge. You get larger institutions; they have no level of knowledge in the biotech space, and just look, do you have revenue?
Yeah.
Yes, you do. Tick the box. So it's such a crazy market. But you know what? I love it.
Yep.
It's part of it. I have people that, dislike me on hot copper. I have people that like me, and it's all a mixed thing. And suddenly you're in this sort of game, but it's no game for us.
Yep.
We're here, pre-revenue biotech. We're always that. Our goal was to build, irrespective of what other people's timelines are on investment or where they're at, to grow the most successful drug developer in Australian history in that context, that has built its whole model off the back of patents out of a university.
Mm-hmm.
That has been our whole thing. That's why I did it. This is why a lot of our team do it, to do that. And we haven't stopped. We have a moment in time now, and if everyone's judging us today, great. We came from nothing, an idea 12 years ago. We had no BIS PSMA until about 7 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We've done it from scratch, and that is our model. We haven't grabbed, something overseas that someone else didn't want and just flog it to the market, or something that was around in the 90s and try and develop that. No. We built all of our products from scratch,
Mm-hmm.
our technology from scratch, and we're heading down that path. That's our philosophy. Science, driving this with longer term views
Mm-hmm.
of taking the entire market, and to have such a competitive position. If that fits into your model, join us as shareholders. If it doesn't, we trade all the time, and there's opportunities for people to buy and sell into a company like Clarity. I love it. I have a fair position. Our team has a fair position.
Yep.
We love what we do every day, and the results are substantiating all of our hypotheses about what we're able to do. Firstly, as scientists, then as commercial, and we're moving now towards commercial, and that's exciting.
I'm intrigued as well, I think, by the fact that historically, we're focused on the Aussie landscape, the ASX. But I think, we can probably all agree that biotech and healthcare more broadly is probably led by the US. I think, there's a stat in the XBI sort of outperformed the S&P 500 over, the 5-year increments forever, up until the 2020 to 2025 period, where the XBI probably did nothing. And the S&P 500, sort of outperformed based on that. Has your experience sort of over the last, thinking about the massive sell-off that happened in about April last year once Trump came in, and, there was all of these changes in the FDA, there was a broader market sell-off, but in particular the healthcare names have been, really hurt. Have you seen a change in sentiment over the last kind of 6 months, with a little bit more increasingly sort of risk on interest in biotech? It's more of a value play now, which is not usually the case with healthcare. I'm interested if you've noticed that.
Yeah, it's so it began. I was in the US at an investment banking function
Mhm.
when the current president was elected,
Mhm.
and the XBI was substantially affected even then.
Yep.
let alone when there was a new FDA
Yep.
lead and who had views that were contrary to science and continues to have today, even though they're not in our space. Oncology is a little bit different than vaccines, but it substantially affected the amount of funding in the US. And some of those groups went under because of the drawdown on funds into the biotech space. We were affected by it because even though we've never done a capital raising with US investors, we had a large amount of US investors on our register who bought on market.
Yep.
So that was a substantial change that we were part of. That April was, I think, the nadir for us.
Yep.
We hit about $1.43. And then we had to, focus on fighting our way out. And we've always fought, whether it was post the IPO where we were sub 40 cents, but it had nothing to do with our company. Even though, once again, retail always attacked the company, always attacked myself as the face of the company, and that's fine. But institutions just sell or buy or whatever, depending on the weather. So on that basis, we still have it, and we fell to that $1.43. We had to build towards. Okay, how do we survive here? We changed the strategy. We got rid of the high risk, low reward assets of kids. And I say that in a really, heartfelt way. Kids that shouldn't be low reward, should be substantial. But from a commercial perspective, it's a lot more difficult. And focused on our priority assets and extended our cash runway.
Yep.
That saw a little bit of a recovery in the space.
Yep.
We were able to execute on a few dynamics that were going on in the market at the time of the second half of the year, started the second half of last year. We were able to do that capital raising of north of $200 million at a premium to the last close, substantial premium to where we're trading over the last 12 months. And that was great. Now it's put us in a very strong position. And then the dynamics since then, it's still volatile. We've been went up and then it came back. Our day-to-day fluctuations are somewhat irrelevant to us unless we're implementing a transaction. That's when we're locking something in. But it's critical. I don't want to see any shareholders lose money. And so those market dynamics are shareholders fighting against each other.
Yep.
It hasn't got anything to do with us. And people say, oh, the clinical trial took longer to recruit. Well, no, you don't have any information on that. We just showed how fast or just recently how fast the recruitment process was. And that dynamic's happening all the time. Just because we don't speak to the market, because we can't update the market for no reason, it doesn't mean the recruitment isn't going really well. But they'll attack the company straight away. That's fine. Attack us. We don't care. I got broad shoulders. I can handle that. Yep. And from the dynamic of some people, they just take a negative view. I don't mind. We're here to build a company. We're here to take a longer term view. We're here to do the hard work. If people don't want to do the hard work, maybe clarity is not for them. We're here to do the deep dive on the science, which we've done. We've built a molecule that we see generating superior position in diagnostics by far. 2 to 3 times the efficacy. It's like a whole new modality, but it's not. We're going to fit use the same PET cameras. We're going to do everything the same. Even these products that fail detecting disease on the new superior cameras, we detect with ours on a regular camera. And that data will read out. It will come. We've seen it happen. And we need to stick to our game plan. No matter what's happening in the markets, we need to be paddling like hell on the pre-revenue biotech boat until we become commercial. And that's in the not too distant future. And then that shifts to de-risking us a little more. But we see the risk which the revenue companies have had. They've come off more than us. And I think for good reason, because they have one revenue stream and significantly under attack, and we're looking to head into that, but not rest on our laurels in building a radiopharm company.